Well, of all the industries, hospitality and especially restaurants are one of the toughest. Business can change overnight and so many problems can arise. Staff changes, energy costs, consumer demand. Neil Perry, one of Australia's best known chefs, has ridden every one of those trends. His famous restaurant brands include Rockpool, Spice Temple and Rosetta. He's used his own capital, banks and private equity to expand his business over time. Then he stepped back and started again with family. And now as that business grows again, he's taking a different approach to the financing. I caught up with him at his restaurant market early this week.
Well, I think it probably is tougher these days. You've got to have a really good, strong business plan, and for small operators it's difficult. And if you don't have a house or you don't have some collateral so that the banks can kind of look at it and think, well, if this goes sideways, we've got something we can grab, then it's really difficult to get bank support, and that's understandable because the banks aren't in the business of losing money.
OK, so just go through the brands that you have created over the years that people would know.
Well, probably Blue Water Grill in Bondi. In the 80s.
Right?
So many people still talk to me about that here. Rockpool, of course, the iconic restaurant, 50 best restaurants in the world for the first 7 years of that award. Then we started Rockpool Bar and Grill, which is really iconic and amazing, both in Melbourne and Sydney and Perth as well. Spice Temple and Rosetta, and then coming here and doing Margaret, and now working with Mike and Mia with Baker Blue in Sydney.
OK, so then having been through all those iterations, trying to either get capital from either banks or trying to get it from partners, wherever it is, what's the best form of capital for one of these types of businesses?
Oh, look, I think the best capital is always bank capital because you can pay that back and you get the equity as soon as you bring partners in. And if they're great partners, that's fantastic. But if you bring partners in, you're sharing equity. So that's not always the best idea.
And is the reason why that's difficult because you may have different philosophies as to where that business goes?
Yeah.
But as soon as you've got partners, everybody has a say.
Yeah, well, everyone has a say. And like, you know, my former business partner and still a partner in Qantas, Trish Richards, of course, is an amazing woman. And she really is my success is really driven through her amazing financial brain. So having her as a partner for all of those years was really important to me. But as we brought people in and out and then sold to private equity and were still involved in that business, I learned a lot about how difficult it is to work with people, and you're exactly right. Trish and I never deviated from what we wanted to do, which was look after our amazing customers and staff. You bring in other people and they have other ideas about what the bottom line should look like and how you get there. And so for me, I kind of realised a couple of years ago that I was better not working for somebody and better working for myself.
So go to me now about the banks and their attitudes about lending and even investment partners when it comes to sort of things like discretionary spending being in question right now.
Yeah, look, it's tight at the moment. There's no denying that, and everything's a little flatter, and of course cost of living's on everyone's tongue. But the reality of it is, doesn't matter what's going on, you need to have a really strong business plan. You need to be really focused on the ability to be able to do that, and you've got to sell that. You've got to be a salesman as well as a chef and a cook and a restaurateur, because the banks or partners, whoever you're dealing with, they've got to buy into that dream with you. They've got to believe that you can make it a reality and believe you can return and get return on investment that goes into these restaurants. I mean, restaurants now, if you do them properly, are really expensive things to build.
So tell me, how expensive, if you're going to this new project, what sort of money are we talking?
Well, we're talking about Songbird is an $8 million build and about $1 million in pre-operatings and design, and Bobby's is $3 million, the bar. So we're talking about $11 to $12 million project, but that's with beautiful restaurants and amazing kitchens, and of course you can do it much cheaper than that. But that's kind of become my signature, is doing it properly. If you think about bar and grills and Spice Temples, beautifully built restaurants, fantastic kitchens, and you get back what you invest into. I mean, if Trish and I hadn't invested into those incredible restaurants, we never would have got the sale price that we got.
But that's still $11 or $12 million.
I've got to pay back.
That you've got to pay back.
Yeah.
So that's the real pressure on you as a business owner, any business owner, trying to come up with that capital and then trying to justify the expenditure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then meet the budget. You know, talk to the banks. And at the moment, the big issue is talking to the banks, getting funding, going and getting your DA through, appointing a builder, and then getting the build cost, of course, which since the advent of COVID has escalated extraordinary. I mean, when I built this during COVID, Margaret, and this is about 40% cheaper than the build over there, and that's really materials and trades, and that's just gone skyrocketing.
Okay, so when you were getting finance this time around, why did you go for an e-guarantee and not go through the traditional routes?
Well, the old traditional routes changed a lot. So, Ross, after the Banking Royal Commission, banks then either had to have that money as a deposit in cash, or they had to lend it to you, and so it was capital sitting there. And so for me, thinking about the amount of capital over these 3 sites and then adding 2 more sites to it, that was a lot of capital to be tied up. It's well over $1 million, $1.5 million. It's almost $2 million. So for me to have that just sitting there in guarantees to landlords didn't really make sense when the Palace Group would take an e-guarantee. And e-guarantees are great because it's essentially an insurance bond, and I'm paying a percentage on that. And just like I used to when I used to have a paper bank guarantee, and it sort of frees up all that capital. So for me, it was kind of a no-brainer. Now, I needed to have a landlord in place who recognised that rather than traditional bank guarantee. That was important. And I also needed to prove to the guys at e-guarantee that I was a good risk. You know, that I had the business nous and I had the restaurants and I had the turnover. And we'd been open for 1.5 years here when I converted to e-guarantee and to get ready for the big one. That was really the reason for it. And at that stage, and still, we're trading very well. It's very profitable. It's a great business. It turns over a lot of money. And so they could see stability within that business framework, and they could see that even if it came off a little bit, there was still a great opportunity for it to thrive. And that's what they're really looking for.
But the thing I get out of this is that you've still got a hunger to grow, a hunger to grow new brands even.
Yeah.
Despite having
crazy,
a legacy of so many. So what's that about?
Oh, you know, I said never again after Margaret, but then when the next best site comes up in Double Bay, facing north like this one on Cooper Street, I just couldn't say no. And I've always had an Asian restaurant in my life, really since about 1994. So for me, it was like to complete the set, really. It was about opening Songbird. And then to get that, we had to take the basement, which is a bar. And like the bakery, which is a partnership between the guys who run the bakery in Melbourne, Mike and Mia Russell, Lyndon Pride, who used to work for me many years ago, came back and opened Bar and Grill in Sydney and Spice Temple. He's got Dante in New York, which is a fantastic world-class bar.
Which is the world's best bar at one stage.
It was, yeah, and it's still an amazing bar. And they've just opened in LA. And they are our partners here in Sydney. And it's a great opportunity to let them thrive. One of the things that's been good for me is that I've been successful in my life, and now I can really help a lot of and I have helped a lot of young people, but I can really help them in business grow and support them because of the relationship I have with banks, because of the relationship I have with developers. And it's great to have been with Mike and Mia and seen, you know, the bakery here in Sydney grow, and that helped Melbourne grow. And the same with Lyndon. We hope to really do something in Australia, and I hope to grow his brand here.
So is that it?
That's probably it for me personally. I think we'll definitely do some extra Baker Blues in Sydney. Sydney deserves great bread in other locations and those incredible pastries and sandwiches. So that's definitely on the cards. For me, I want to walk every day to my restaurants, be with my staff, be with my customers. It only took me 45 years to work that out. Travelling around the country, building restaurant brands, but this is very personal. You know, my family own this. First time ever, no partners. So Margaret Songbird next door, no partners at all. We'll never have partners. And then the kids have just got to work out what they want to do with it.
Neil Perry, great to chat to you.
Thanks, mate.